If you're paying someone as a contractor, but managing them like an employee, this episode is for you. And if you're not sure what the difference is, stay with me. Because misclassification is one of the most common and expensive mistakes small business owners make, often without realizing it.
You're listening to the Off Balance Podcast, where faith, family, and business collide. Hosted by Brooks Deming, Doctor of Business Administration, business coach, and resilience expert. Each episode features real-life conversations to help entrepreneurs like you build resilience and lead with confidence.
Welcome back to Off Balance. I'm your host, Dr. Brooks. This podcast is for entrepreneurs and professionals who want clarity, structure, and sustainability in their businesses. So far this season, we've talked about structure, busyness, HR risks, and the limits of motivation. Today, we're going to get practical. Employee versus contractor, and why getting this wrong can cost businesses money, peace, and credibility. Let me start with a disclaimer. Most people aren't misclassifying their team on purpose. There's no ill intent. In fact, they're usually trying to do what feels like the right thing, especially in the early days of building a business. They're trying to keep costs down. Employees mean payroll, taxes, benefits, unemployment insurance, and more. When contractors, you cut them a check and move on. They try to stay flexible. Maybe you need help for 10 hours a week. Maybe you're not sure how long the project will last. So you bring someone in as a contractor and it feels a lot more manageable for you. Sometimes businesses move fast. No red tape, no onboarding paperwork, no long-term commitment. It's like hiring in light mode. From the contractor's perspective, this setup can feel safer too. Less paperwork, less responsibility, more freedom in when and how they work. So it seems like a win-win until it isn't. Here's the kicker. What you call the person doesn't actually matter. You can write down independent contractor across the top of the agreement in bold letters. But if they're functioning like an employee in the eyes of the law, that label won't protect you. What matters is how the work is being performed. And that's where the confusion tends to creep in. So, like always, let me give you an example. Imagine you hire someone to help with your social media pages. You tell them what to post, when to post it, what captions to use, and what tools to use to schedule everything. You expect them to be available during your business hours, attend weekly meetings, and check in with you daily for feedback. Paper, that might be labeled as a contractor, but in reality, they're functioning like an employee. You're controlling not just the outcome, but how the work is being done and when it's being done. That kind of control is one of the biggest red flags to the IRS or the state board. So again, the intention might be good. You're just trying to build your team in a way that's lean and manageable. But if you're not careful, this well-meaning decision can expose your business to serious risks. Let me go deeper, because this is where so many well-meaning business owners get blindsided. When you're building something from scratch, especially if you're balancing faith and family and the pressure to make payroll, you're making decisions in survival mode. You're praying for provision, you're stewarding every dollar, you're trying to grow without overextending. So when it comes time to bring in help, the contractor route feels like wisdom. It feels responsible, it feels lean, it feels like good stewardship. And in some cases, it is. But the problem isn't the heart behind the decision, is the misunderstanding of how the laws define the relationship. Most entrepreneurs think the difference between an employee and a contractor is about paperwork or preference. It's not. It's about control, independence, and economic reality. And this is where things get tricky. Because as founders, we're used to being hands-on. We have a vision. We care deeply about the quality of the work. We want things done in a certain way. That's not wrong. But when you start telling someone exactly how to do the work, exactly when to do the work, what tools to use, where to do it, requiring them to be available during certain hours, limiting their ability to work for others, you're no longer just purchasing a result, you're directing a worker. And legally, that distinction matters. So let's revisit the social media example, and I'm going to expand it just a little. If you hire a true contractor for social media, the relationship might look like this. You agree on deliverables, say 12 posts a month, 2 reels, monthly analytics reporting. They decide when they batch content. They use their own scheduling software. They determine their workflow. Maybe they serve 5 other clients. Maybe they work at 10 p.m. after their kids are asleep. You care about the outcome. They control the process. That's independence. Now, contrast to that would be you require them to log into your company Slack from 9 to 5. You assign tasks daily. You dictate captions word for word. You require approval before anything goes live. You prohibit them from working with competitors. You expect them to be at team meetings every Monday. That's structure, that's oversight, that's employment territory. And here's what makes this especially dangerous: it often happens gradually. You start with a loose contractor agreement. Then the business grows. You need more consistency, more responsiveness, more control. So you tighten expectations. Without realizing it, you shift the relationship, but never change the classification. And that's when risk compounds. If the IRS or your state labor agency determines that someone should have been classified as an employee, the consequences can include back payroll taxes, penalties and interest, unpaid overtime, unemployment insurance contributions, worker compensation exposure, potential audits of your entire workforce. That's just not an accounting headache. That's a financial gut punch to a growing business. And the part that hits home for a lot of faith driven entrepreneurs is not just about compliance, it's about integrity. We talk often on this show about stewardship and building businesses that reflect our values, about honoring the people who help us carry the vision. Classification isn't just a technical legal issue, it's part of how we care for the people working alongside us. Because when someone is functioning as an employee but classified as a contractor, they're missing protections that they're entitled to. Things like unemployment benefits if work dries up, workers' compensation if they're injured, overtime protections in some states. So while the setup might feel easier in the short term, it can create vulnerability for them and for you. Now, I want to say this clearly. Hiring contractors is not wrong. It can be a beautiful, flexible, mutually beneficial arrangement, but you have to structure it correctly. And that starts with understanding that this isn't about convenience, it's about the relationship and how does it function in real life. So if you're listening and thinking, oh no, I might be doing this, I want you to take a breath. This is not about shame, it's about awareness. And awareness gives you the power to adjust before it becomes a crisis. Because building a business that lasts, one that supports your family and honors your faith, it means building it on foundations that can withstand growth. And classification is one of those quiet, unglamorous foundations that matters more than we realize.
This episode is brought to you by the Business and HR Clarity Audit, a strategic one-on-one session designed for entrepreneurs who are growing with intention. If you're a purpose-driven business owner juggling leadership, team dynamics, and sustainable growth, but something just feels off, the Clarity Audit is your next right step. In this personalized audit, you'll uncover what's working, what's holding you back, and how to align your operations, team, and leadership strategy for long-term success. It's not just about checking boxes. It's about building a business that supports your vision and your values. Walk away with a clear, customized roadmap to move forward with confidence. To book, visit brooksdeming.com.
My clients often ask me what determines classification. So without getting legal or technical, here's the simple framework that I use to explain it to them. At the core, it comes down to control and integration. So contractors control how they do the work. You might give them a final deliverable like a website design, a logo, or a set of financial reports, but you don't tell them how to do it step by step. They choose the process, the pace, and the methods. On the other hand, employees are directed. You guide them, you train them, you assign them tasks with specific instructions. You might even supervise their work as it's happening. That's direction, and it points to an employee relationship. Contractors set their own schedule. They work when it suits them. Even if it means late at night or early in the morning, you might agree on deadlines, but not on daily hours. Employees follow a schedule. You expect them to be available during business hours. You assign shifts. You ask them to clock in or check in regularly. That's structure and it signals employment. Contractors use their own tools. Think laptops, cameras, software lenses, editing programs, even office space. They bring what they need to the table. They're self equipped. Employees use yours. You give them a company email address, you give them logins, computers, phones, and systems. You equip them for the job because they're your team. Contractors work independently. They typically aren't attending weekly staff meetings or being looped in on your internal operations. Their work is more project based and outcome focused. Employees are integrated into your operations. They're part of the rhythm. They're involved in decision makings, meetings, team culture, and they are included in a daily flow of your business. So, what's the bottom line? If you're setting their schedule, approving time off, dictating the processes, and expecting them to be always available, you're creating an employee relationship, whether you meant to or not. You can call them a contractor on the agreement. You can pay them through a 1099. You can even mean well and think that this just feels easier for everyone. But intent doesn't override reality. And that's where so many small business owners, especially those balancing faith, family, and business and entrepreneurship, they unintentionally step into risky territory. It's not about what you want the role to be, it's about what it looks like in practice. From an HR and legal perspective, misclassifying someone as an independent contractor when they should be an employee doesn't just create a paperwork issue, it creates a ripple effect that can impact nearly every part of your business. So I'm going to break it down. Taxes. When someone is classified as an employee, you as the employer are responsible for withholding and paying payroll taxes. This includes things like Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment insurance. With the contractor, you don't have to do that. But if the IRS or your state determines that they were actually an employee, then you would be on the hook for the back taxes, the penalties, and any interest that they assess that you owe, even if it's been months or years. The second thing is wages. Employees are entitled to a certain protection under the wage and hour laws, like minimum wage, overtime pay, rest, breaks, depending on your state. Contractors, not so much. So if someone is misclassified and working 50 hours a week, you may owe back pay for every overtime hour that you didn't realize that you owed, and that can add up fast. And then we have benefits. Employees are often eligible for company benefits, health insurance, retirement contributions, paid time off, where contractors, they are not. But if someone has been working like an employee and then they get reclassified, there would be claims that they were unfairly denied access to benefits that they should have received because they were actually an employee. Again, this puts burden on you as the business owner. Then let's look at liability. If a contractor makes a mistake, in many instances, they carry their own insurance or they take on the personal responsibility. But if they're functioning like an employee and cause harm, say a financial error or a data breach, or even, let's say, a workplace injury, you could be held fully liable. And without the right protections in place, that can be costly. And then we're going to talk about compliance. Government agencies like the IRS, Department of Labor, your state employment office, they all have authority to audit your classifications. And when they do, they don't just look at the contract, they look at the work that is being performed. They look at the working relationship. And that's important to understand because audits focus on behavior and not labels. It doesn't matter if your contract says independent contractor. If the person is being managed like an employee, they will likely be treated as one by the agency. And the truth is, when misclassification is discovered, it's the business owner, not the worker, who is held responsible, even if it's unintentional, even if the worker preferred being called a contractor, even if the arrangement seemed mutually beneficial. That's why structure matters. You have to have clear roles, clear agreements, clear boundaries. These aren't just formalities, they're your protection. They help you honor the people who work with you and avoid problems that could derail your growth. It is also a way to lead with integrity. Something that matters deeply to many of us is navigating our life and leadership through the lens of faith. We want to build a business that reflects our values, and that includes doing right by the people that we hire. Now let's shift. From a coaching standpoint, I see this issue come up a lot, not just around classification, but around leadership. And the pattern is almost always the same: avoidance rooted in fear, fear of increased costs. I hear things like, if I make them an employee, I'll have to pay more. Not sure if I can afford that. Then there's a fear of commitment. If I formalize this relationship, does this mean I'm stuck? What if things change? Fear of doing it wrong. I don't even know where to start. What if I mess it up and make it worse? So instead of tackling it head on, people delay the decision, not out of laziness, but out of being overwhelmed. They tell themselves, I'll fix it later. I'm still small. It's not a big deal. It's working for now. So why rock the boat? I get it. When you're building something from the ground up, you're managing your business, you're managing faith, your family life. The last thing that you want is one more complicated thing to deal with. But here's the truth: delay doesn't remove the risk, it increases it. The longer the gray area continues, the harder it is to clean it up. The more intertwined someone becomes in your business, the messier the fallout if something goes wrong. And the more you put it off, the more it quietly drains your energy, because deep down, you know it's unresolved. You're constantly second guessing. Can I ask them to do that? Should I have called them on that? What if someone finds out that this isn't set up the right way? All of that mental noise, it adds up. But the good news is clarity reduces stress. Every decision you make from a place of clarity, even if it costs more, even if it stretches you, it brings peace and confidence. But avoidance, it multiplies stress. It keeps you up in a reactive cycle, always hoping nothing blows up, but never fully secure in how things are set up. And as a business owner, your peace of mind is worth protecting. As a leader, your integrity is worth preserving. And as someone navigating the journey with a deep desire to honor both your calling and your responsibilities, this is one of those areas where getting it right now can save you from a whole lot of regret later. Now we're going to transition to the educational lens. In the world of adult learning, whether in corporate training, coaching, or entrepreneurship, one principle holds true across the board: clarity improves outcomes. People thrive when they know where they stand. They bring more energy, focus, and commitment when they're not wondering, am I allowed to make this decision? Is this my responsibility or someone else's? Am I doing too much or not enough? When team members know their role, what they're responsible for, and how their work fits into the bigger picture, when they know their boundaries, what's within their control and what's not, and their expectations, what success looks like, and how their performance will be measured, they show up more engaged, more confident, and more aligned. But when roles are unclear, especially when someone is functioning like an employee but labeled as a contractor, that misalignment starts to show. Misclassification creates confusion, and confusion creates frustration. And oftentimes, frustration leads to conflict, resentment, or even turnover. People may feel taken advantage of. They may feel like they're carrying employee level responsibility without the security of benefits, or they may feel unclear about what they can say or not say because the relationship lacks structure. On the flip side, the business owner may feel let down, wondering why a contractor isn't stepping up like an employee, not realizing that they're expecting something outside of the scope of the role. And that's why clear classification, honest, intentional, and correct, makes such a big difference. It protects the relationship and it preserves trust, and it creates that stability, not just legal, but relationally. So this isn't just about getting the paperwork right. It's about creating a culture of clarity in your business, a culture where people feel respected because they know what's expected, a culture where you can lead with confidence because your structure matches your values, a culture where your business isn't built on vague roles or verbal agreements, but on solid, sustainable foundations. So, whether you're just hiring your first contractor or reevaluating your current team, I want you to remember this: clarity is a gift. It's not controlling, it is going to free your mind and your time. It allows everyone to bring their best without second guessing their place. And when clarity flows through your team, it doesn't just improve performance, it is going to strengthen the connection. It is going to strengthen trust, and it's going to give you a peace of mind. So let's zoom out for a moment, because here's the reframe I want to offer. Employees versus contractor isn't just a decision, it's an alignment decision. For so many entrepreneurs, especially those in the early or growing stages, the difficult thinking is, what's the most affordable option? And that's understandable. You're watching cash flow, you're building, you're learning, and you're trying to do more with less. But when classification becomes only about saving money, we risk building something shaky, something that might look smart in short term, but it can't hold the weight of long-term growth. So the right structure supports growth. The wrong one, it quietly undermines it. When your team setup is aligned with the actual needs and functions of your business, the right people in the right roles, with the right agreements, you unlock momentum. You reduce friction, you build trust, you empower people to fully show up knowing the boundaries are clear and the expectations are mutual. But when the structure is off, when someone is operating as an employee under a contractor title, or when you are afraid to commit to what the business needs, growth slows down. Or worse, you find yourself dealing with stress, turnover, audits, resentment, or confusion that could have been avoided. And let's be honest, this isn't about perfection. No one gets it right all the time. You are not expected to know every legal detail or hire a full HR department overnight. But it's all about intentionality. It's about being willing to pause and ask, is the way I'm classifying this role reflective of how we're working together? Is the structure helping or hindering our momentum? Am I leading in a way that aligns with my values, not just what's convenient? Those questions take courage, but answering them gives you clarity. And clarity is what creates peace and forward movement. So before you ask what's cheaper, ask instead, what's aligned with the business I'm building and the leader I want to be? Because in the long run, alignment always costs less than avoidance. And if you're feeling that tension right now, that quiet nudge that something in your structure might need attention, I want you to hear this clearly. This isn't about shame, it's not about fear, and it's definitely not about doing business wrong. This is about stewardship. Stewardship of the vision God entrusted to you. Stewardship of the people who trust you with their time and talent. Stewardship doesn't mean you have to figure it out alone. Sometimes the most responsible, faith-filled decisions you can make isn't to push through. It's to pause, get clarity, and build from a place of alignment instead of anxiety. That pause, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. And that's exactly why I created what I'm about to share with you. I created a business and HR clarity audit for entrepreneurs who are unsure if their business is aligned. In this session, we review how work is structured, how people are managed, where risk exists, what needs to change before it becomes expensive. The link to book your audit is in the description of this episode. I want you to tune in to the next episode because we are going to talk about why, if you're the only one who can do everything, you don't really own a business. So until then, titles don't determine reality, structure does. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Please rate this episode and share it with your family and friends. To learn more about your host or to book a coaching session, visit www.brooksdeming.com. Until next time, rise.
Hi, I'm
Tiffany of Tiffany Brown Designs. With over 20 years of creative experience across industries, I create and elevate brands one design at a time through intentional graphic and brand design, polished film and video editing, and creative artistry. Even the music you're hearing right now, that was produced by me. I also create custom tracks for websites, intros and outros, and content. So what are you waiting for? Visit TiffanyCBrownGD.com and let's bring your vision to life.